So good evening everyone and welcome to our talk tonight, Shining a Light on Scottish Art at Kirkcaldy Galleries. Please note we're recording tonight's talk, which will be uploaded publicly to our City Arts Centre Facebook page and also the Lorimer Society website. Tonight's lecture is part of our wider programme to complement our wonderful exhibition at the City Arts Centre, Reflections, the Light and Life of John Henry Lorimer. I'm Margaret Findlay and I'm Learning and Public Programmes Manager for Museums and Galleries, Edinburgh. I'm delighted to introduce Jane Freel from OnFife, which is Fife Cultural Trust. Jane is Collections Curator for OnFife Museums and Galleries, who run a number of libraries, theatres and museums in Fife, including the absolutely wonderful Kirkcaldy Galleries, Dunfermline Carnegie Library and Galleries and St Andrews Museum. They manage the museum collection owned by Fife Council. These are very varied, including social and industrial history, archaeology, natural history, world cultures, photographs, and of course art. Jane has worked for 13 years at Kirkcaldy Galleries. Her role is to care for and manage the collections. She has also worked on a number of projects, including the refurbishment of Kirkcaldy Galleries in 2013 and the relocation of the stored collections to the new OnFife Collection Centre at Glenrothes in 2017. Kirkcaldy have an absolutely wonderful collection of John Henry Lorimer paintings, and Jane is going to explore them with us all tonight, as well as the wider collection. Jane, the floor is yours. A very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Margaret, and thank you to Aileen, Wendy and the Lorimer Society for inviting me along tonight. I think this is the most people I've ever spoken to on Zoom, so I hope you can all hear me and see some of the slides that I'm going to be showing you tonight. I've actually turned my chat off so it doesn't distract me, so if Margaret or Wendy want to tell me things, go ahead. So, as you can see from the slide, this talk is called Shining a Light on Scottish Art at Kirkcaldy Galleries. And Kirkcaldy Galleries has an amazing collection of art, including works by William McTaggart, the Scottish Colourists, and artists linked to Fife, including John Henry Lorimer. This talk is going to look at the Lorimer paintings in our collections, why Kirkcaldy has an art collection, and the considerable influence of John W. Blythe, and then also some of the other artists with Fife links from our collection. This is Spring Moonlight by John Henry Lorimer. It was purchased by Kirkcaldy Art Gallery in 1938, just 10 years since the Museum and Art Gallery opened and 2 years after Lorimer's death. It clearly illustrates the two threads that run through John Henry's work, his fascination with the effect of light and his love of home and family. It's the most popular painting in our collection. We know this because it was voted as the favourite painting by the public for our People's Pick exhibition in 2013. And often when I'm working in the galleries, people stop me and say, "Where's the lady with the baby?" Because they clearly remember this painting. And so they are a little sad that it's in Edinburgh at the moment, so it's seeing a lot of new faces and new people are seeing it. And we've had to put a sign up in the gallery to reassure people where it's gone. Now, the painting recalls an evening of music and dancing. Mrs. Lorimer described how John Henry worked tirelessly to complete the painting for the Royal Academy. Willie Wheeler, while passing his work soon after 5 in the morning, still saw the light and said to him, "Does Mr. John never go to his bed at all?" Originally called the dance when it was exhibited at the Royal Academy in 1897, it shows the Great Hall at Kellie Castle, the family's summer home from 1878. The painting shows John Henry's use of light. You can see the moonlight streaming in through the window and across the floorboards, and an unseen fire is casting a warm glow onto the dancer and the pianist, whilst the shaded candles reflect on various surfaces. Now, my previous photograph of the painting didn't show this very clearly, so this is an image taken by our conservators when the painting was out of its frame, and it shows it a little better. Given the painting is now over 100 years old, it's required a little bit of TLC over the years. Like all of us, paintings do age as well. For our Millennium project in 2000, it was conserved with funding from Anne Davidson and the Friends of Kirkcaldy Museum and Art Gallery. The painting's tacking margins had been removed when it was previously lined, and the new margins had split, which meant the canvas was starting to droop and the painting tent. Therefore, the whole painting was relined. Now, before the painting went on loan to the Reflections exhibition, and as part of the condition of the loan, the painting was again conserved as the lining had started to drop a little bit in the top corner, which you can see in the picture there. So it was restretched and decreed again. There were also a few repairs made to the frame, and this was funded by the Friends of Kirkcaldy Galleries, as they are now known. Conservation can give us an opportunity to examine some details that you wouldn't normally see in the painting. You can see the pianist's face much closer here than you could on my previous photograph. But also on the picture on the right-hand side, you can see pencil marks where the artist has redrawn the figure before painting it. We also examined the painting under UV light, and this revealed areas where the artist had reworked the painting around the maid's face, which makes it look a bit odd, to be honest, and also around the candles. Moving on from Spring Moonlight, this is another of the paintings in our collection. This is Sundown in Spring, and it was one of John Henry's works painted at Kellie Castle, or of Kellie Castle, I should say. The work was donated to us by a former Provost of Kirkcaldy, James Wilson, in 1949. It illustrates John Henry's use of light, especially the sun shining on the building, the shadows of the trees, and also the shimmering of the water. It's also very detailed, and you can see in this close-up 2 little ducks swimming down the stream, which I hadn't actually noticed until I started doing this talk and looked at it a bit more closely. Again, we had this conserved in 2015 because it had, and again funded by the Friends of Kirkcaldy Galleries, because it had become a little dirty and required some cleaning. Moving on to another painting, this is called The View of Kellie Castle. And this actually isn't in the Reflections exhibition at the City Arts Centre. It's been on loan to us at the galleries for several years from members of the Lorimer family. Now, even when John Henry was a famous portrait artist and was travelling extensively, he often returned to spend his summers at Kellie. He had a studio in one of the towers. This painting, again, is on loan from members of the Lorimer family. It's called Conservation Piece. And this is in the Reflections exhibition, and it was painted in 1879. It's been conserved recently, and this image is one of the ones that conservators took because mine was quite a dark portrait. It's quite a dark picture. It's an early portrait that features his 2 sisters, Alice and Hannah, and he painted Alice throughout his career, as well as other members of his family. Hannah was also an artist and actually exhibited at the Royal Scottish Academy before John Henry did. And again, during conversation, we found some hidden things. This is a signature on the stretcher of the painting of Lorimer's name that we didn't know was there. John Henry's professional training started at the School of Art on the Mound in Edinburgh. He graduated into the Life School of the Royal Scottish Academy, where he was taught by George Paul Chalmers and William McTaggart. Kirkcaldy Galleries has the largest collection of William McTaggart's works outside of the National Galleries, so it's interesting to see this connection. This sketch was donated to us in 2014 and may have been created as part of the Life School classes. And at the bottom left-hand corner, you can just see Lorimer's signature. Now, this is the final painting by John Henry that's in our collection, and it's a painting of interior owner, and I'm going to let you look at it while I have a drink of water. Again, this isn't in the Reflections exhibition, but it shows a wonderful use of George Henry's use of light. You can see it's a very warm-looking room and a slightly chilly scene outside. I'm glad I'd like to be the cat in this picture rather than outside of the window. And the painting was bequeathed to us by Sir James and Lady Core in 1952. Sir James Core was the son-in-law of William McTaggart and the director of the National Galleries. He was also fundamental in the formation of the collection at Kirkcaldy Galleries, which leads me on to the next part of my talk. And I need to change the slide. After World War I, Kirkcaldy was looking for an appropriate way to commemorate the dead. Public subscription was raised for the memorial, and by the 1920s, a site was chosen in the grounds of Balsusney House, adjacent to Kirkcaldy railway station. A design was put out to competition, and it was won by Perth architects Heaton and Mackay, and there was a £50 prize. However, in 1922, the Provost announced that an anonymous donor was going to give the funds to build an art gallery as part of the memorial. Instead of building the memorial in the grounds, Balsusney was to be demolished and the new gallery built on its foundations. In July, the donor was revealed as John Nairn, liner manufacturer and chairman of the firm Nairns. Since 1916, he undertook to build, complete and equip the picture gallery. But why would he do this? Nairn was a great lover of paintings, but also he had a more personal reason. His only son, Ian, on the right of this picture, was a captain in the Fife and Forth Yeomanry and was killed in the final months of the war. The gallery was built as an integral part of the memorial, and it was designed to be the most striking and elaborate of any in the kingdom. It opened in June 1925, and its original layout was 4 rooms downstairs for the museum and lecture hall, and 4 galleries upstairs with walls of French grey canvas. Scottish Country Life in 1926 reported that Mr. John Nairn, recognising the civilising and cultural effect of the study of fine arts and natural sciences, formally handed over the handsome museum and art gallery to the town. Now, it's wonderful for Kirkcaldy to have a new gallery, but what would we put in it? How does the town actually build an art collection? And this problem was tackled by Thomas Corson Morton, the first curator of the gallery, and himself a minor Glasgow boy. In his task, he was assisted by J.W. Blythe, the convener of the Art Gallery Subcommittee, and James Corr, director of the National Galleries of Scotland, who bequeathed interior owner by Lorimer to Kirkcaldy Art Gallery as mentioned. The solution at the outset was to borrow work. For the inaugural exhibition, some fabulous works were borrowed from a range of 45 bodies and private individuals, including John Nairn, J.W. Blythe, and William Burrell. The show included many French and Dutch artists, lots of big names, including Monet, Renoir, Degas, and Fantin-Latour amongst them. And this painting is one of the few paintings that was in the Loan exhibition which made its way into our collection. Just going to have another drink, excuse me. So the founders of the museum realised that borrowing works wasn't a long-term solution. They realised that the acquisition of a permanent collection will necessarily be gradual. Nairn himself donated the first 2 works in the permanent collection, Bullring Crowd, featured here, and also The Boatyard by Arthur Melville. He hoped it would stimulate other public-spirited acts, and it did. In 1928, Nairn gave a further donation to build a library attached to the museum and to build a further 3 galleries above. And this is pretty much the external layout of the building that you see today. A second inaugural Loan exhibition was held in 1928, with each gallery dedicated to a particular artist. There was 1 gallery devoted to each of the following. One had William McTaggart works, and he was born in 1835 and died in 1910. This painting, Kinloch Rannoch, was bequeathed to us in 1950 as part of the Harley bequest. Also featured work, the second gallery featured works by William Quiller Orchardson, 1832 to 1910, and this painting, Enigma, was bought in 1935. And it always makes me wonder what has happened between these 2 Have they had a falling out? Is she just not interested? Who can say? The third gallery featured works by James Lawton Wingate, 1846 to 1924, and this painting was donated in 1928 by Andrew Harley. The next gallery along had paintings by Joseph Crawhall, 1861 to 1913, and this painting is also now in our collection, donated in 1969. The sixth gallery had paintings by Edwin Alexander and his father, Robert Alexander, and again, this painting has been donated to us. And in the final and the seventh gallery, a futuristic note is struck, as the local paper declared, with a room dedicated to Samuel John Peploe. He was the only living artist among the illustrious dead, as Peploe himself put it. He was very excited by the galleries and Thomas Corson Morton's plans and wrote to him from Edinburgh saying, "I think your inauguration scheme is great. Nothing ever happens in this dead little town like that." Morton was a very enlightened curator, declaring, "We must push Peploe down their throats, whether they like it or not." If John Nairn and Thomas Corson Morton influenced the early development of the gallery, then the person most responsible for shaping the collections was John Waldegrave Blythe. He was a linen manufacturer and a great lover of music and art. As the convener of the Art Gallery Subcommittee, a position he held from 1925 until his death in 1962, Blythe influenced the collection by purchasing works and encouraging donations. For example, this work was bequeathed to us, to the Art Gallery, in 1964. There's a letter in our archives from the owner, Miss George, to Blythe, asking if he would like to come and view the drawing, as the owner thinks, "It is so clever, I'm sure you will like it." He obviously did, because this is now in our collection. As well as encouraging donations, Blythe was a collector in his own right. He had inherited his father's Hawkley Muir factory, and in 1908, he had built a new house for himself and his wife in Loughborough Road. He proceeded to fill it with paintings and took advice from dealers, including Alexander Reid in Glasgow and especially Peter McComish Dott in Edinburgh. The first serious work he bought was this, Away to the West, in 1910. It cost £280, and he actually sold his car to buy it. It was to be an indication of the passion he had for McTaggart, which didn't diminish. Over his lifetime, he collected 45 works by the artist. As well as purchasing works by McTaggart, Blythe also consistently bought works by James Lawton Wingate, a Glasgow-born landscape artist. He collected works by the Glasgow boys, including Edward Hornell, Joseph Crawhall, and John Henry among them. And he also collected works by the Scottish Colourists, especially S.J. Peploe. Over his lifetime, he collected 84 works by Peploe, and in 1936, wrote in the introduction to the catalogue for a memorial exhibition at the Scottish Gallery, "Having lived with Peploe's pictures for many years, I have experienced an ever-growing conviction that he was probably the greatest painter of his generation." However, initially he wasn't so sure about Peploe. The art dealer Peter McComish Dott wrote to him in 1915 and said, "I think you ought to consider the Peploes more seriously than you do." However, Blythe soon got over his initial reluctance and became one of Peploe's greatest supporters. Blythe's collection also included works by George Leslie Hunter, and we actually lent this work to the City Arts Centre for their retrospective of Hunter in 2012. And he had works by F.C.B. Cadell as well. Now, Blythe didn't just exclusively love Scottish art, but as his family say, he was never really anti-English or anti-French, but was consistently angry that important critics didn't appreciate Scottish art. Blythe also had works by English and foreign artists, including a fantastic group of works by the Camden Town Group, Spencer Core, Harold Gilman, and Walter Sickert. Sickert in particular became one of his favourite artists, and this painting is currently on loan at the Walker Art Gallery in Liverpool as part of their Sickert retrospective. It's one of the Camden Town's murder series paintings by Sickert, and it's actually very different paintings with quite a lot of the things that we have in our collection. As well as the Camden Town group artworks, he also collected paintings by other artists, including L.S. Lowry. Blythe filled his home with works that he loved, with different artists displayed in different rooms. Sickert was in the drawing room, McTaggart was in the dining room and on the stairs, including this work painted right at the end of his career. Blythe would, according to his daughter Cora, grown heavily when he had to sign a cheque. But high prices didn't deter him. He paid over £1,000 in the 1920s for this painting. In the principal bedroom, he had pet clothes on display, and he was always sneaking paintings into the house to stop rows with his wife. When he literally ran out of space at home and in his office, he began lending works to Kirkcaldy Art Gallery. But the works he lent to the gallery weren't inferior by any means. Works were regularly rotated between his home and the gallery. He even lent his favourite work by McTaggart, The Wave, featured here. Former curator William Hood said he used to visit every Monday morning to see the paintings and would stay for around about 2 hours. When Blythe died in 1962, aged 90, he had no plan for what to do with the paintings. According to his daughter Marjorie, he hadn't even considered dying. At the end of September 1963, Kirkcaldy Town Council accepted an offer to purchase 116 works, which was almost half of Blythe's collection, for the art gallery. This included 21 works by William McTaggart and 38 works by S.J. Petler. Now, for the final part of my talk, I'm going to briefly look at some of the other Fife art-based artists in our collection. I'm going to begin with the Peyton family from Dunfermline. This is an image of a medallion of Joseph Noel Peyton by his sister Amelia Peyton Hill. 2021 was the bicentenary of both artists. Amelia was born in January and Joseph Noel was born in December 1821. Their father, Joseph Neil Peyton, was a designer of patterns for damask in Dunfermline, which was a centre for linen manufacturing. They had a younger brother, Waller Hugh Peyton, who was also an artist, and we do have some paintings of his in our collection, but unfortunately I don't have any images of them to show you. Now, Amelia Peyton, who is also known as Amelia Robertson Hill, became a prominent sculptor in the 19th century. She began as a painter and then trained as a sculptor in later life. In 1862, she married the photographer David Octavius Hill, and they lived in Edinburgh. Amelia Peyton was known for sculpting marble busts of historical and literary figures and was commissioned to create various public sculptures, which was highly unusual for a woman at this time. This sculpture of Robert Burns was donated by the artist to Carnegie Library, which is now part of Dunfermline Carnegie Library and Galleries, one of our venues. It's a half-size plaster statue, a scaled-down version of the statue that's in Dumfries. Joseph Noel Peyton was a very successful artist who was well known for his historical, biblical, legend and fairy subjects. Originally, he trained as a textile designer in Paisley before moving to London to study art. Here he met his lifelong friend and the pre-Raphaelite John Milius. He became a full member of the Royal Scottish Academy in 1850 and the Queen's Alumna in Scotland in 1866. This painting shows the story of Christ's temptation in the wilderness, and it shows Satan watching over a sleeping Christ. Joseph Noel Peyton also designed the stained glass windows for Dunfermline Abbey, which feature drawings of the Last Supper and the Resurrection. This window is known as the McLaren window, and it was completed in 1904, 3 years after his death. In our collections, we have 9 drawings for these stained glass windows, and we're in the process of getting these conserved. And the image here shows 5 of the sketches at the conservators. We did plan to have an exhibition to mark the bicentenary of Joseph Noel last year at Dunfermline Carnegie Library and Galleries, but due to COVID, this has been postponed to 2023. Now moving on to another artist. I'll find my notes. This is a painting by Thomas Millie Dow, who is one of the Glasgow boys, and he was actually born and died in Fife. We have over 40 works by the Glasgow boys in our collection. And these were a loose-knit group of around 20 artists who were bound together by friendship and a shared desire to break with the existing conventions of Scottish art. The Dow family lived in Dysart in Fife, and Thomas didn't join the family law firm. Instead, he trained as an artist in Paris, where he met some of the other Glasgow boys. Earlier in my talk, I mentioned the influence of William McTaggart on Lorimer. As the collection grew, the art gallery became more established, it actually started to influence artists. This is a painting by William Gear, who was born in Methil in Fife in 1915, and he was the son of a miner at Michael Colliery. But he had a talent for art, and at Bookhaven Academy, he met his teacher, Bob Morris, who had studied at the College of Art in Edinburgh, and he encouraged him to take on art. William Gear used to visit Kirkcaldy Art Gallery whilst his mother was shopping regularly from the age of 15. He was impressed by the seascapes of William McTaggart and the works of S.J. Petlow. This work was actually loaned to City Art Centre in 2015 for their retrospective. Now, probably the most famous artist who's been influenced by Kirkcaldy Art Gallery is Jack Vettriano. He has said, "I grew up admiring the work of so many great Scottish painters in what was then my local gallery. Kirkcaldy has a great permanent collection. So I have the galleries to thank for the start of my art education." And this is his favourite painting. It was selected for the 2013 People's Pick exhibition by him. Kirkcaldy Art Gallery was the first public gallery to accept his paintings into their permanent collection, and this is one of the paintings that we have. This summer, Kirkcaldy Galleries will host the exhibition Jack Vettriano, The Early Years. It's the first retrospective to focus on his formative years and early career, and will feature works signed with his birth name, Jack Coggan. The exhibition is on from the 17th of June to the 23rd of October, and tickets are available on our website, onfife.com. Now, most of the paintings I've shown you today are available to view on the Art UK website, which I would highly recommend for you to look at, as it features paintings and sculptures from public collections across the UK. But as good as the website is, the images really aren't as good as the paintings are in real life. So I would urge you to visit our Lorimers while they're on show in Edinburgh, or if you want to see some of the other paintings that I've shown you today, then Kirkcaldy Galleries is open 6 days a week, not Mondays, and is easy to reach by road or rail, as we are right next door to the train station, and it's free entry. So that talk has gone a little quicker than I thought it would, but that's me finished. So thank you so much for listening. This is my final slide, where I've put a couple of web pages that you might find interesting. One of them is our Museum and Galleries page at OnFife, and also the Art UK website that I previously mentioned. So thank you everyone for listening.
Jane, thank you so much. It was so lovely to see that. I always think that Kirkcaldy has got one of the most kind of perfect collections. It is so representative of the main artists, and of all of our kind of public collections over Scotland. I always think that yours is almost like microcosm of how a little public collection should be, and I was so delighted to see you include the wave tonight, because I think that that rivals any Impressionist painting. And I know that my colleague David Patterson, the kind of chief curator from the City Arts Centre, that's one of his favourite paintings in Kirkcaldy's collection as well. It's a marvellous image and just so simple. So thank you very, very much for that. Do start to pop your questions in. I know that Morag preempted a question that I've got. I've very much been enjoying Michael Portillo's railway journeys, and he clearly loves Kirkcaldy. What is the connection with Michael Portillo and Kirkcaldy Galleries?
Thanks. So, sorry, there's an echo from somewhere that's distracting me. So Michael Portillo is actually the grandson of John W. Blythe, and he used to come to Kirkcaldy quite a lot on his holidays and would go and visit John Blythe in his house and would come to the galleries. And when Michael Portillo was filming the very first series of the Great Railway Journeys, they came to Kirkcaldy as one of the first stops and came around the galleries, and also went to visit the house that John Blythe built on Loughborough Road, which is now a care home, and he's been in touch with the galleries for many years.
That's great, thank you. I hope everybody else has been enjoying that. I think Michael Portillo's actually come into his own. I think he's a better presenter than he is a politician, or he was a politician. Stephanie is asking why the maid, I think she's referring to Spring Moonlight, is wearing what looks like a wedding dress. I think, Stephanie, you mean Spring Moonlight.
I'll be honest, I don't know why. I can only imagine that that's the dress that she was wearing as her uniform. I think she's a maid or a nursemaid, so maybe that's just what she wore. But
I think
if anyone else has got theories.
I think a lot of the Lorimer paintings, certainly a lot of the ones that are in the City Arts Centre at the moment, the maids have very similar dress. So I don't think it is just that specific painting. I think that was possibly just their attire at that time. I don't know whether Alan Wendy's got any views on that.
Well, it's really interesting that Stephanie's asked that question. I was at the exhibition again yesterday, and with some friends, and one of them said, "Is that a bride or the maid?" So I think, you know, it is quite a fancy outfit. Maybe it was evening wear. Maybe for some reason the maid would wear evening wear, but it's the headdress is almost like a veil. So maybe it isn't a maid at all. Maybe it's one of the family. I'm not at all sure, but anyway, that discussion has prompted an interest, and we'll see if we can find out.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the information we have is that it's a maid, but I don't know what that's based on. So yeah, we can certainly have a little look back and see if we can find out any more information.
Yeah, Barbara's also saying, how do we know that she's a maid, which is a really good point.
And I think also, I don't think this painting is necessarily of real people. It's a kind of imagined scene, I think. But again, people who know more about Lorimer can contradict me on that one.
Yeah, there's some interesting suggestions coming up in the chat that it might be a special occasion wear, it might be the nanny. You know, nobody's absolutely certain. I don't know if there would be a note anywhere in John Henry's diaries or sketchbooks, but it's certainly one to explore.
We have Sue from New York. Hello, Sue, from across the pond. Sue is curious about the size of Spring Moonlight. Do you have the dimensions to hand, Jane? I think it's quite similar to our Flight of the Swallows, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't have the exact dimensions, but I know it's taller than I am, and I'm 5'3". Certainly, whenever we have to move it, it can be quite a mission because it's quite heavy. It's got a big pane of glass in the front of it, and it does require 3 or 4 people to move it. So we don't move it very often, basically, but it's big.
These two were born to be together, Spring Moonlight and Flight of the Swallows, I always think. And like Kirkcaldy, Spring Moonlight has consistently been voted our favourite collection painting as well. People just absolutely love them. So thank you, Sue, for your, we could maybe try and find that out actually, and we can post it on our social media, the exact size, but yeah. they're fairly big.
Yeah, we do have that, the dimensions. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, Kay's actually saying that costume, just going back to the maid's costume, it's quite consistent with what always looks to be the nannies. They all, in a lot of the paintings, they seem to have that, so it could well be a nanny. A question, what is the name of the painting of the horse race?
The painting of the, yeah, that's the painting by Joseph Crawhall. It's called The Finish, and it's available in Art UK. If I was confident that I could get back to it on my talk, I would try to. But now I've just got rid of the screen, so here we go. Let me see if I can find it now. Excuse me for scrolling. There it is. So that's The Finish. And it's one of the watercolours that we have actually, and we do have quite a few watercolours in the collection, but we don't have as many images of them as we do of the oil paintings. That's largely because of Art UK. They came and did the photography of all of the oil paintings about 10 years ago, and they did this for the whole of the public collections in the UK. It's an absolutely amazing thing to have done, and it's really improved access to our collections, and I'm sure to many others. So if you haven't seen Art UK before, I'll just plug it again, because it's a brilliant website, especially for cold February nights if you want to go and look at some nice art.
Jane, there's I think 3 or 4 people from the States, which is fascinating. And one of them saying it's the first introduction to Scottish art, and she's absolutely loved it. There's also a question about whether many of the paintings are on canvas. You know, what is the basis for the paintings? Yeah. And somebody else said, could you say a little bit more about John Henry Lorimer?
Okay, so just to answer the easier question about the canvas. So yes, most of our paintings are on canvas, have been painted on canvas. We have a few on panel, certainly Peplo like to paint on panel quite frequently. We also have a few on paper, so they tend to be more the watercolours or the sketches. And John Henry Lorimer, I did debate a little bit about how much to say about John Henry Lorimer, because speaking to the Lorimer Society, I wasn't sure if people already knew it, and I wasn't intending to give a biography of him. And partly I don't know a huge amount about him, to be truthful. But he was an artist that was part of the Lorimer family, and his brother Robert Lorimer was an architect and actually designed the interiors of quite a lot of buildings. We used to have a venue called Pittencrieff House Museum, and that was designed by his brother Robert Lorimer. I'm not very good on dates of when John Henry was around, so I don't know if Aileen Wendy would like to say a little bit more about Lorimer.
John Henry died in 1936. I think he was born in 1856. He was 80 anyway, when he passed away. There's lots of family information and stories. He spent, he was born and brought up in Edinburgh. He went to paint in Paris for a while. He set up a studio in London. Apparently he had a nasty fall at one point on pavement, and it was felt in the family that had caused a certain loss of confidence, and that might be why he came back to Edinburgh. He was passionate about Kellie Castle. It was a holiday home for the family, but he had a studio in one of the towers. He actually lived at the Guile house, which he owned and had restored in Pittenweem. So quite a variety of experiences. I was very taken with the painting, Jane, that you showed of the cottage, the window in Iona. I don't think I've ever seen that before. And just an absolutely sweet little painting of kind of daily life. And again, the way he treats light and the reflections from the flowers that are the flower basket that's hanging, that one, that trailing ivy, I think, but the shadow there is fantastic in the evening. I think it's evening light. And there must be another window that's throwing that reflection, because it's not a reflection from the window we see. So, you know, sometimes when you explore a bit further, they're quite complex. And a low chair for the spinning wheel. I find that absolutely beautiful, because the simplicity is lovely.
And John, just to also say thanks very much for your question. Lots of our talks have been very, very specific to Lorimer, and we've got a couple still to come. David Jones is talking specifically about furniture in a couple of weeks' time in the paintings, and Martin Kemp and Charlotte, the co-curator, are doing an in conversation in a few weeks as well. So Jane's talk was always going to be more an overview of Kirkcaldy, with looking at Lorimer, but looking at some of the best of Kirkcaldy. But do look at our websites, because there's some very specific Lorimer ones still to come. And if you're local, Charlotte's doing a curator's talk in the gallery. We hope to resume some in-gallery events in March. So if you are close to Edinburgh, do pop in, and Charlotte will be doing a very specific talk on John Henry at that point. Question, Jane, asking what your favourite painting is in Kirkcaldy's collection.
Okay, I think my favourite painting, and I haven't actually featured it in this talk, is Lady with a Goldfish by George Henry. And it's of a very sort of striking woman sitting in a black dress and her hair all done up in a seat, with a goldfish bowl by her, and there's just something about her position and the kind of confidence on her face that I just really like. It's something that I would recommend you go and find it on Art UK if you can, because yeah, it just makes me smile whenever I see it.
There's also a query about Jack Vetriano and how perhaps he was looked down on by Scottish art world for some time.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a, you know, people in the Scottish art world maybe saw him as a kind of populist painting, and maybe didn't and maybe didn't, you know, think should his work be in an art gallery. It's just so popular all over the world, and as a local Fife-born artist, it's part of our remit to showcase work by Fife artists. So we were only too happy to accept the two Vetrianos that we have in our collection. And we're very excited about the exhibition that we're having this summer, the Jack Vetriano, the early years, which is, I think, the third exhibition we've had in Kirkcaldy over the years dedicated to his work. But this one's the first one that's going to look back at his early years, when he painted, when he was just sort of starting out and learning kind of the ropes of painting. He did quite a few works under the name Jack Hoggan, which is his birth name. And the exhibition is going to feature some of those works, and then some other works that are on loan to us from lenders. So it should be really excited. And it's been delayed for 2 years. It was meant to be 2 years ago, but of course the pandemic had put paid to that one. So it'll be great for it to finally happen.
Thank you, Jane. And Candice has popped over to Art UK while we speak, and can announce that Spring Moonlight dimensions are 1 metre 83 wide and 1 metre 30 sorry, 1 metre 83 high and 1 metre 30 wide. So thank you very much, Candice, for multitasking.
Yes, thank you, Candice. That was very helpful.
So another thank you saying that this lecture is exposed to new artists. So thank you very much.
That's good.
Lots
and
of people having that Iona painting.
Yeah, no, it is a lovely painting. I should just say, if you're coming down to Kirkcaldy, like many art galleries, we can't possibly display everything that we own at the same time. We've got over 1,000 paintings in our collection, and we have 4 galleries that are dedicated to permanent display of paintings, so we can only fit maybe about 60. So at the moment we have paintings by William McTaggart and the Scottish Colourists on display. We also have some paintings by Fife-born artists. So I'm trying to think what's in the gallery and I can't off the top of my head. And then we also have some portraits on display as well of some prominent people. And that's where Spring Moonlight was displayed, but we've replaced that painting.
And Jane, most importantly, Kirkcaldy used to have a reputation for having the best scones in the cafe of any gallery in the whole of Scotland. Is that still the case?
Unfortunately, our cafe is currently closed due to the pandemic. It stopped trading at the beginning of the pandemic, and we're looking at revamping it and bringing out a new kind of look for it, which will be coming very soon in the next few months. I don't have a date of when it's going to open, but it'll certainly be before the summer, and hopefully the scones will be as good as ever.
Good. That's the most important thing.
Jane, could I ask you about, you know, given you've got such a big collection, if as a member of the public you come to visit, is there a computer or anything that one can see the images of what's not on display?
Yes, so you can, because we're part of, so Kirkcaldy Museum and Art Gallery used to be a separate building, and next door was the Kirkcaldy Central Library. But in 2013, we had a huge refurbishment and we basically knocked down the wall between the library and the museum. So now it's one great big open building, and you can go into the library where there's public access PCs, and you can access the Art UK website from there. Also, there is, in the introduction, our new collection centre got mentioned, and that's a new store that we have in Glenrothes, where all of our paintings, when they're not on show, are housed there along with the rest of our collection. And if you do want to see a specific painting, you can make an appointment with the curators at museum.inquiries@onfife.com, and I'll try and pop that in the chat in a minute. And you can come along and we can make time for you to come and actually see the paintings. We're hoping to start doing tours of that site, but again, due to the pandemic, that's been delayed and we don't have a date yet for starting that, but we're certainly looking to start that up. And finally, I probably should also mention that we have other museums in Fife. The introduction again, and I've mentioned it in my talk, we have Dunfermline and Carnegie Library and Galleries, and we host temporary exhibitions there. At the moment in Dunfermline, there's the Explorer exhibition, and that features a lot of different items to do with exploring the world, so different kind of world cultures collections, but there are some of the paintings in there. And in St Andrew's Museum, we also have an exhibition called Artastic, and that's basically features most of the a lot of the paintings that are from the Kirkcaldy collections, and they're on display in St Andrews. So although we can only house a few paintings in Kirkcaldy, we use them in other exhibitions in other venues. And as I've mentioned, some of them go on loan as well to other galleries like Edinburgh.
Thank you.
So I think that is probably it. So thanks all for your interesting questions tonight. Another one of our international visitors saying thanks so much for opening this up outside the UK. Very interesting. So that's why it's really important as well that you pop all that on the survey. Sorry to keep on banging on about this survey. I've probably mentioned it about 10 times tonight, but it is so important. So thank you all for joining us and for joining us so far afield. And thank you, Jane, for a fascinating insight into a wonderful gallery, and thank you Alan Wendy, my co-pilot in all of these events. Always brilliant support and help, and it's been brilliant working with you and the Lorimer Society all the way through all these events. It's been a brilliant collaboration, and as I say, we've still got lots of events to go, so do check either the Lorimer Society website or Edinburgh Museums and Galleries website, which is edinburghmuseums.org.uk. We've still got some wonderful events to come. So thank you very much, and hopefully we will see you all soon, and bye for now.
Thank you.